Before the stage lights ever warmed his skin, before the massive America's Got Talent logo towered behind him, before millions would one day argue online whether a voice like his should even be possible at that age, the boy from Cebu learned to sing in the quietest, most ordinary places. His name barely mattered back home. In his neighborhood, people called him the kid who sings. He was small for his age, thin, with knees often scraped from running barefoot on concrete roads. Cebu mornings were loud with tricycles, vendors calling out prices, radios crackling with old love songs. That was where his voice first learned to travel, cutting through noise, finding space, surviving. His family lived simply. His father worked long hours doing whatever labor was available, sometimes construction, sometimes loading goods at the port. His mother sold snacks outside their home, waking before sunrise to prepare rice cakes and sweet bread. Music was never part of any plan. There was no savings for lessons, no idea of stages bigger than school programs or barangay fiestas. Singing was something the boy did because silence felt wrong to him. He sang while helping his mother mix batter. He sang while walking to school, his backpack almost as big as his body. He sang while washing dishes at night, water splashing rhythmically as if keeping time. His voice wasn't trained, but it was curious. It explored melodies the way children explore puddles, fearless, messy, honest. At school, teachers noticed first. During flag ceremonies, when students sang the national anthem, his voice floated above the rest. Clear, strong, too mature for someone who still struggled with multiplication tables. Classmates teased him sometimes, calling him radio or old man voice. He didn't mind. Singing made him feel seen in a way nothing else did. The first time he performed in front of people, it wasn't planned. At a small community event, the microphone malfunctioned, and the scheduled singer didn't show up. Someone pointed to the boy sitting near the front. "He sings," they said casually, like it was nothing. He felt his heart slam against his ribs, but he stood up anyway. When he opened his mouth, the crowd fell silent. It wasn't just that he hit the notes. It was how he carried emotion he had no words for yet. The kind of emotion grown adults struggle to access. People exchanged looks. Some laughed in disbelief. Others stared, frozen. When he finished, applause erupted. Too loud, too sudden. He smiled shyly, not understanding why everyone was acting as if something extraordinary had just happened. From then on, his name traveled faster than he did. Invitations came from nearby schools, local contests, small television appearances in Cebu. Still, nothing changed at home. He returned to the same narrow streets, the same modest meals, the same nightly routine. Fame was a word adults used. For him, singing was still just breathing with melody. America's Got Talent was never a dream he dared to have. He didn't know America. He knew Cebu. He knew the smell of rain on hot pavement, the sound of waves hitting the shore, the echo of his own voice bouncing off concrete walls. AGT existed on a cracked phone screen, glimpsed through borrowed internet, a distant universe where impossible things happened to other people. The opportunity came unexpectedly. A talent scout saw one of his performances online. Messages were exchanged, forms filled, videos submitted. The adults spoke carefully, worried about money, travel, visas. The boy listened quietly, clutching his phone, afraid that speaking might make it all disappear. When approval finally came, it felt unreal. He had never been on a plane before, never left the Philippines, never seen buildings taller than the ones in Cebu City. The night before they left, he couldn't sleep. He practiced quietly, whisper singing into his pillow, afraid to wake his parents but terrified of forgetting how his voice felt. Los Angeles overwhelmed him. The air felt different. The streets were wider. The people moved faster, spoke louder. Cameras were everywhere. He held his mother's hand tightly, his small fingers gripping hers like an anchor. Backstage at AGT, time stretched. Contestants warmed up, laughed nervously, some cried. He sat quietly, feet dangling above the floor, humming softly. Producers asked him questions. How old are you? Where are you from? Are you nervous? He answered politely, but his thoughts were elsewhere. On the song, on the first note, on the way his chest would feel when he started. When they called his name, his heart jumped into his throat. The stage was brighter than he imagined. The audience looked like a sea of shadows, broken by glimmers of faces and camera lenses. The judges' table felt impossibly far away and terrifyingly close at the same time. Simon Cowell sat there, expression unreadable. The man whose reactions decided careers. The man whose silence was louder than applause. The boy walked to the center of the stage, shoulders squared the way his father had taught him. He took a breath that felt too big for his lungs. "Hello," he said into the microphone, his voice soft now, almost fragile. They asked his age. The audience murmured when he answered. Someone laughed in disbelief. Simon leaned forward slightly, curious but guarded. He had heard thousands of singers. He had learned not to trust hype, especially when it came wrapped in childhood innocence. "What will you be singing today?" Simon asked. The boy named the song. A classic. A choice that made eyebrows rise. Songs like that required life, pain, understanding. Things children were not supposed to have. Simon nodded slowly. "Okay. Whenever you're ready." The music began. For half a second, nothing happened. Then the boy sang. The first note landed like a quiet confession. The second carried weight. By the third, something shifted in the room. The audience leaned in. The judges stopped moving. The air itself seemed to hold still. It wasn't loud. It wasn't showy. It was controlled, intentional, and impossibly deep. His voice didn't beg for attention. It commanded it gently, like someone telling a truth you didn't know you needed to hear. Simon's eyebrows lifted almost imperceptibly. He leaned back, then forward again, eyes narrowing, not in criticism, but in focus. This wasn't what he expected. Not from a child, not from anyone who looked that small standing on such a big stage. As the song unfolded, the boy disappeared into it. The stage lights faded from his awareness. The cameras vanished. There was only the melody, the story, the emotion rising from somewhere he didn't fully understand himself. He sang about love, loss, longing, concepts he had observed but not lived, yet somehow embodied with unsettling authenticity. The audience reacted in waves. Gasps. Whispered, "Oh my God." Hands flying to mouths. Cheers forming unexpectedly. By the time he reached the chorus, people were already on the edge of standing. Simon stopped tapping his pen. His posture changed. His face softened. This was the moment he lived for. The moment when cynicism cracked, when something real broke through the noise. The final note lingered in the air, fragile and perfect. Silence followed. A dangerous silence. The kind that makes performers doubt everything. Then the room exploded. The audience stood as one, applause thunderous, overwhelming. The boy blinked, startled by the sound, his eyes wide. He hadn't expected that. He smiled shyly, bowing his head slightly, unsure what to do with so much noise directed at him. The judges stood too, even Simon. When the applause finally died down, Simon looked at him for a long moment before speaking. "I don't know how old you are," he said slowly, "but that voice is something people wait their entire lives to find." The boy swallowed hard, nodding. "You're too young to sound like that," Simon continued, shaking his head in disbelief. "And yet, here you are." The comments that followed blurred together for the boy. Praise, amazement, words like natural, gifted, extraordinary. He clutched the microphone with both hands, grounding himself, reminding himself to breathe. When the votes came, the outcome felt inevitable. Yes, 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 yes. The final yes from Simon landed like a seal of destiny. Backstage, his mother cried openly, holding him tight. His father wiped his eyes, pretending something was stuck in them. Producers congratulated them. Strangers asked for photos. The boy felt dizzy, overwhelmed, joyful, scared, all at once. That night, back in the hotel room, he sat on the bed, legs crossed, staring at the city lights outside the window. He replayed the performance in his mind, not the applause or the judges' reactions, but the moment he started singing, the calm that settled over him, the certainty that this was where he belonged. News spread fast. In Cebu, neighbors crowded around televisions and phones. People who had known him since he was a toddler watched in disbelief. Teachers cheered. Vendors paused their work. Pride rippled through the community like electricity. But with attention came pressure. Expectations grew heavy. Interviews asked about dreams, futures, careers. People wanted him to be the next big thing, the next superstar, the next miracle. He smiled politely, answering as best he could, but inside, he was still the boy who sang because silence felt wrong. Through the competition, he stayed grounded. His parents reminded him daily where he came from. They prayed together before each performance. They talked about school, about home, about normal things, anchoring him in reality while the world tried to lift him into fantasy. Each time he stepped on stage, he sang not to impress, but to express. That difference was felt. Audiences responded to the honesty, the lack of pretense. He wasn't performing adulthood, he was channeling something universal, something that transcended age. Simon watched him carefully throughout the season. He had seen young talents burn out, crumble under pressure, lose themselves chasing approval. But this boy was different. There was strength beneath the softness, discipline beneath the innocence. "You have something rare," Simon told him once backstage. "Protect it." The boy nodded, not fully understanding, but feeling the weight of the words. Win or lose, the impact had already been made. Doors opened, opportunities appeared, but more importantly, a child from Cebu had reminded the world that talent doesn't follow rules, that age is not a boundary for truth, that sometimes the most powerful voices come from the smallest bodies. When the season ended and the lights dimmed, the boy returned home changed, but not transformed beyond recognition. He still walked the same streets, still greeted the same neighbors, still sang while helping his mother cook. The difference was subtle but profound. He sang now knowing that his voice mattered, not because judges said so, but because he had felt its power to move hearts. At night, lying in bed, he dreamed not of fame, but of songs he hadn't sung yet. Stories he hadn't told, emotions he would one day understand more fully. Too young, too powerful, and just getting started.